For today's episode of The Stretch, we're talking about experiencing nostalgia. Nostalgia is defined as a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically a period or place with happy personal associations. What are some triggers for nostalgia, Travis, that you have experienced?
It could be a number of things. Our senses are often triggers for nostalgia. Hearing, taste, especially smell, interestingly.
I found that to be interesting as I looked things up about olfactory memory. There was an article in the Journal of Neurobiology in 2021 that said that the reason that olfaction is such a powerful trigger for memory is because the primary olfactory cortex has a direct hookup, has a privileged access to the hippocampus, where we form and organize recall memories. And everything else has to go through the thalamus. So there you go. If you've ever walked into your children's school on the first day of school or whatever, and you get that whiff of chalk and pencil, grit from the pencil sharpeners and the lunch lady and everything, and that's an instant passport to the good old days, or the bad old days as it might be.
So that's what happened when I found my grandpa's coveralls the other day. I could smell their house. Whoa, it was like a time warp.
I find another one that people feel very triggered by, me personally, is music. And riding in the car with one of my sons a couple weeks ago, and this song came on, and I was like, "Oh, this used to be like one of my favorite bands when I was a kid." He's like, "How come I've never heard of them?" I was like, "Yeah, it's just a period of life. I don't want to really go down memory lane from high school, I mean, some people loved high school, and some people were destined to peak later. Whatever.
Right.
I definitely didn't do it in high school. So some of those things
Me either.
are better left behind. So as we've prepared for this podcast and we've thought about nostalgia, and it describes it, as we said, a wistful longing or affection for something of the past. One of the things that we've talked about, and I've asked my family, what do you think about this? Can we feel nostalgia, Travis, only for things that we have personally experienced? Or can we feel a sort of longing for things past, which were not necessarily part of our life experience, something that belonged to another time period or circumstance?
Yeah, fascinating question. Asking that at first, it was like, well, we have to be part of something to have true nostalgia about it, right? And there's different kinds of nostalgia, is what I've learned. So there's actually historical nostalgia or personal nostalgia, stuff that belongs to us. So there is a distinction. It's pretty interesting.
Right. And, as I look at the definition, it says that this longing, sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past is typically for a period or place with happy personal associations. It doesn't say always or by nature or that it must be something that you've personally experienced. It says it typically is. And of course that makes sense. But I think we can experience sort of have a hunger for nostalgia or an appetite for nostalgia for things that we have not personally experienced. Like when my family is watching Stranger Things and one of my kids says, "I want to be a kid in the 80s with, homies like that." And I'm like, "No, you don't." But anyway, they sure make it look cool.
They do.
Yeah.
Movies and shows are good at that.
I think that, I would have liked to have, been a snappy dresser back in the days when guys wore fedoras, not hipster fedoras, but open the doors for ladies without getting weird looks. And you could go and hear live music in a jazz club or, somebody, performing a really great swing concert or something like that.
Yeah.
That would have been great. I would have loved that.
Yeah, that's the era I like to think about too. Cool cars too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like many things we explore on the stretch, we want to highlight the positive aspects of whatever the topic at hand is. But we do realize it's important to be aware of and cautious of the potential pitfalls of a given topic. And like we've talked about in our articles or on different things, the pros and cons of social media use or different decision-making paradigms, we'll continue that approach. And as we discuss nostalgia, I think there's certainly some considerations there, but this approach, the pros and cons, picking it all apart, it's really kind of the essence of our project, to winnow and glean and to separate the wheat from the chaff and the good ideas from the bad. And nostalgia is awesome. Generally, it's a quality of life, element. It's something that brings joy for the life that we've lived and how we've lived it well, if we've done so, or in as much as we've done so. But there are some stumbling blocks there. There's some pitfalls with nostalgia. And a few of those that I've listed, Travis, have to do with, first one is self-deception. And I don't know if you've ever done this or known someone that's done this, but when they look back, or when we look back, when I look back on the past, I think, the good old days. Boy, it's not like it used to be. And so we sugarcoat the past experience. And that has potential to make our present seem like it's less fulfilling. And really, the past was a present at one point, and we didn't think, this is the best time ever.
Yeah.
There were always struggles. But I think as we age, and we wisely do hang on to the good things, and we try to jettison and discard and overcome the negative things. So we don't retain those in the same way. We don't relish them. We don't pull them out to look at the low light reel. We want to look at the highlights.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
What are some other thoughts you've had about like some of the negative aspects of experiencing nostalgia?
I think, we have to be balanced about it. You can definitely long for the past and just spin your wheels in it. Then you might miss out in the present moment. And I think that's one of the things that easily happens. We get so caught up in the past and where we're heading in the future that we forget to live now. So it's easy to get that out of balance.
Yeah, sort of a living in absentia, kind of like I'm here, but I'm not here. My mind is somewhere else. I'd rather be somewhere else. And so I can't be my best self. I can't show up for the people in my life now. Yeah. So as I thought of that, actually, I thought of a great example from Harry Potter.
Okay.
And in the interest of not boring people to death, but also in keeping in harmony with our literary focus, I won't use a bunch of personal examples, but I thought this was a great example from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And it's from the chapter entitled The Mirror of Erised. And it's about Harry Potter's experience as he looks at this mysterious enchanted mirror, and it's described in this way. He looked in the mirror again. A woman standing right behind his reflection was smiling at him and waving. She was a very pretty woman. She had dark hair and her eyes. Her eyes are just like mine, Harry thought. The tall, thin, black-haired man standing next to her put his arm around her. He was wearing glasses and his hair was untidy. It stuck up in the back, just like Harry's did. Mom, he whispered. Dad? They just looked at him smiling, and slowly, he looked into the faces of other people in the mirror and saw other pairs of green eyes like his, other noses like his, even a little old man that looked as though he had Harry's knobby knees. Harry was looking at his family for the first time in his life. The Potters smiled and waved, and Harry stared hungrily back at them, his hands pressed flat against the glass, as though he was hoping to fall right through it and reach them. He had a powerful kind of ache inside him, half joy, half terrible sadness. So here we have the boy who lived. He's longing, he's feeling an aching, desperate need to know people that he's never actually known or doesn't have any functional memory of. He was just a baby when his parents were taken, and these other people, he's never been on the planet with them. And he sees them in the mirror of Erised, which is desire backwards. Get it? Mirror reflection. That's so clever. Yeah, I know. We all got that ages ago. I just think it's awesome.
New to me.
Anyway, well, I'm glad I could help. And so I think J.K. Rowling answers the question, can we have a wistful longing for things past, even things that were not part of our past experience per se? And I think another question about nostalgia is answered as we look at the story as it continues with Harry's third night in a row back at the mirror to see his family. And Dumbledore is there to meet him. And he warns him about the workings and perils of the mirror. He says that that the mirror shows us nothing more or less than the deepest and most desperate desires of our hearts. You who have never known your family see them standing around you. However, this mirror will not give us knowledge or truth. Men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they have seen, or been driven mad, not knowing if what is shown is real or even possible. It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. Remember that. And so I think that says it all right there. I thought that was a perfect example. It illustrates a couple things about nostalgia, about living in absentia, wanting the past, more than the present, and also having that experience of, I want this, even though I've never really felt that. I feel that longing, that wistful longing and sentimental hunger. So Travis, you looked up some things kind of more about the kind of the psychological parameters of nostalgia. What did you learn?
Yeah, I enjoyed that. It's interesting because nostalgia is actually referred to as a psychological resource, which means, okay, there's something useful. It's not just a trip down memory lane, but it's actually something that our minds do for a reason. And actually, an article in the Harvard Business Review talked about nostalgia at work, which caught my attention. And that's what this writer mentions. It says nostalgic reflection often involves both negative and positive emotional states. So there's the triggers of the five senses, but there's also emotional triggers that put us into nostalgia. And so it can be sadness, it can be loneliness, it can be uncertainty, we can be bored, and then we can kind of drift back and look back at something. And it's very autobiographical, and looking back that way can help us kind of see where we've been and where we are and make that comparison. And it also helps us to know that, hey, I have a past, I'm here in the present, I'm not floating out here in the universe aimlessly. There's a path.
You kind of see your own trajectory a little bit better with perspective. So just for clarification then, to the experience of nostalgia is still where we savor the flavor of something positive, right? But the trigger may be something like an emotional trigger, could be negative or positive to direct us back towards that positive thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Which should be obvious because nobody's like, hey, I remember that one time things were really sucky. I'm going to go think about that. But I just wanted to clarify because,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the trigger can be good or bad.
It can be good
but ultimately it draws us to something good.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And if it is something negative that you draw back to, you can say, hey, I went through this hard time, in the past. I'm going to remember that. I got through that. It was hard. I've been through challenges before, and your brain and your heart saying, okay, I could do this.
I think that's a great lesson because, there are things that we experience in life that are, crucibles of our progress and opportunities for maturation and growth and whatever. But it's not like we're going to think back on those and think, oh, yeah, that was a good old time.
Right.
I remember the bad old days. But
right.
But there can be lessons learned there from maintaining that perspective. So we don't just keep the good stuff and whatever, but we do compartmentalize and we draw from them in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. And you can also look back and say, that's how I used to be. Here's how I am now. I've changed. And that can be in different variations of good or maybe not so good.
I like that. I'll give you an example. Again, talking to one of my children, and we were talking about some of the shows they used to watch on the Disney Channel, and they're just awful. They're just, like when I walk into the room when they're on, I can feel my IQ dropping precipitously. And they thought they were the bomb when they were younger. They thought they were just so good. And now to watch at them, they'll admit, oh, that was so cringy. But they still feel those warm, wonderful feelings of nostalgia to think, oh, I used to be, silly enough or innocent enough or, easily impressed enough that this did it for me. And those were good times. We watched them together and we, but now I think there's value in seeing that and they can say, I need more now. I'm not like that. I'm not the person I was before. The stuff that used to do it for me doesn't do it for me. And I think of Paul's teachings that when I was a child, I put away, when I was a child, I spake as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things.
Yeah.
And I've actually thought of that and thought about how sometimes you can prime the pump towards your personal development by flipping the script on that. When I put away childish things, I become a man.
Okay.
So
like
sometimes you just have to, drop things that are holding you back. And as you do, you'll find more meaningful things to take their place. But sometimes it naturally happens, and it should.
Yeah, I agree. And I think of, a simple example of going on a hike. You're looking forward, you're up on that trail, but then you can take a pause and look out and see where you've arrived and see how far you've come up that switchback trail and say, hey, we're doing this. We're making progress.
That was a great analogy. So what else did you learn about psychological triggers and some of the parameters of nostalgia?
I think the other interesting thing was it's known as a bittersweet emotion. So if it does trigger that negative emotion or start with that, that's the bitter. It leads to the sweet. Just to highlight what you mentioned about it leading to a positive. A psychologist named Christine Bacco had a lot to say about this. Here's what she said. She said, I define nostalgia as a bittersweet emotion. It's sweet because we're remembering the best times, the good times of our life. The bitterness comes from the sense that we know for sure that we can never really regain them. They're gone forever. The irreversibility of time means that we absolutely cannot go back in time. So it helps us to deal with the conflict of the bitter longing for what can never be again together with the sweetness of having experienced it and being able to revisit and relive it again. So being able to go and look at our memories, for things that are not with us, for people that aren't with us, for times and places, that's a good thing. And we can build on that. We can long for it, take joy from that, and then move forward.
That's really a great share. As I was thinking about nostalgia, I sort of thought of them as sort of leftovers of personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as our kids have gotten older and we have them kind of going on to do different things, we've had to learn to cook for smaller and smaller groups. And sometimes we forget, or we don't have everybody that we thought we were going to have if they still want to come over, or we end up with a ton of leftovers. Normally I like leftovers, but you can get too much of a good thing, as we said earlier. But sometimes the leftovers are actually experienced differently than they were originally anyway. Certain things just taste better the next day, or, you warm it up when it's cold out, whatever.
Yeah.
Or you use them in a different dish to kind of reinvent whatever it is. And I think that nostalgia, our memories, our positive memories, our happy memories are kind of the leftovers of personal experience. And we can derive nourishment from them.
Yeah. Just
as we might have in the first instance, and in a different way, actually. Because sometimes in the moment, maybe we don't know what we've got, or we're distracted by other things, or we're encumbered by, different demands or timing or logistics or just noise around us. But I think this speaks to the importance of personal reflection and meditation and engaging in activities of remembrance with journaling or looking at old photos, like you mentioned earlier, different mementos. I'm kind of weird. One of the things that I do is I save receipts.
Okay.
So if I took our family to the movies, I'll keep the ticket stub. When we go to Disneyland, I'm not just looking at the pictures. I keep the receipt of the sandwiches that we bought in California Adventure, or the burritos we had there, or whatever. And I don't know, just to me, I guess probably as a father and a provider, that's something that means something to me that wouldn't mean anything to anybody else.
Okay.
I don't save receipts for anything else. I'm not an accountant-y kind of guy or anything like that. But those things they're impactful, and we can go back and savor them in a different way than maybe we did in the first place, or in the first instance. And your quote from the the psychology article reminds me of a great quote by the author J.M. Barrie, who was the author of Peter Pan, among other things. And I can see that maybe this is something that he had a lot on his mind as he wrote about a boy who's in a place where he doesn't grow up and he doesn't have to change and he likes where he is now. But he said that God gave us memory so that we might have roses in December. Now, roses in the summertime is pretty cool, right? Mm-hmm. But a rose in December, when it's dark and dreary and gloomy and cold, that's a different context, and you can appreciate it in a completely different way.
Yeah, it's a great image, especially buried in snow.
Right. Another thought that I had was, as you were sharing this, was from, I don't want to say it's from Dr. Seuss because I couldn't find it sourced.
Okay.
But this is from a poet, and his name is Ludwig Jacobowski. And it's a variation of something that's attributed to Dr. Seuss, but I couldn't find anything that properly sourced it from him. It says, the English translation of Ludwig Jacobowski's quote is, "Do not cry because they are past. Smile because they once were." And I thought that's really wise.
Yeah, that's a great one. And that comes from that reflection. That comes from the positive nature of nostalgia. No matter what triggers it, the bitter brings forth the sweet. I think a big takeaway for me is just, it's okay to be reflective. You mentioned that earlier. Like, reflect on your life a little bit, see where you're at. Look back, look at the joys, look at the difficulties. Are you where you want to be? Or are you further than you ever expected? Wherever you're at, you can accomplish what you want to just through some of that reflection on yourself and through those that have gone before you.
Yeah, and I think looking at the things that you've enjoyed previously, the things that were meaningful, that can be a great motivation to keep doing what you're doing so that you can provide meaningful opportunities for creating memories, forging bonds of family affection, so that other people will have something to draw on. And if we work hard to make our lives beautiful and wonderful and productive and fruitful, and we teach the people that we care about and that are closest to us to do the same and help them do the same, we're basically planting more roses for them to have in the Decembers of their lives.
I love it.
Not to beat a metaphor to death, but I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have any closing thoughts on nostalgia, Travis?
Well, one thought that is occurring here is we've talked about being intentional and creating those roses for December's later, and that's important. But so much happens in the day-to-day living of life that we might not even be aware of, right? I think you and I might remember things from our youth or reflect on things from life at home that our mom and dad wouldn't even know about or say, hey, that wasn't planned, but we have memories of it. An example for me is I remember growing up watching Wheel of Fortune all the time and just having that be part of the evening during the week and my mom being really good at it. And now we're watching that at home. The kids love it. It's a lot of fun. And then I remember that and it has past connections for me. My parents weren't saying, hey, let's watch Wheel of Fortune so the kids remember this later. It's right. Something we did.
That's awesome. So in addition to being intentional and having, opportunities to really make something special and, make it happen and forge those family ties and create memories, you're saying that spontaneity, just day-to-day stuff, organic stuff is meaningful.
Yeah.
I get that. That totally makes sense to me.
That's fun. I mean, I have memories of riding in my dad's truck to the gas station to get licorice snaps. Nice.
I love it. Yeah, I've been surprised as my children have aged and I've heard them talk to each other or talk to me, the things that they remember. And I'm like, I didn't even know that happened. I didn't know you guys had that conversation or that happened or that was meaningful to you. And it's quite stunning. And it's very gratifying, actually. It totally proves your point. And The cool thing, too, will be someday your kids will watch Wheel of Fortune with their kids, and actually it will be the same hosts.
Right.
Pat Sajak at 177 years old with whatever,
Vanna.
190-year-old Vanna White. And her, she'll come out of the cryo chamber just long enough to touch the letters, and then she'll go back in, and your kids will enjoy that.
I can't wait.
We hope that you enjoyed listening to how we experience nostalgia, our discussion there. And we hope that you'll join us next time when we discuss creativity.